Thank you so much for being here today at our inaugural, our kickoff webinar of a series of webinars sort of introducing and walking through Nourish Colorado's Law and Policy Roadmap. And we are going to get into what the heck that is and what it is all about. So very quickly, I wanted to just do a quick welcome, and then I'll get into the agenda and how we're going to spend our time together between now and 1 p.m. Mountain Time together. So this is our welcome. We have, thanks to Diego, we have provided a bit of an overview around language justice and simultaneous interpretation today. Now we like to do a bit of introductions about who we are, who you're going to be hearing from today. So very quickly, welcome, good morning. My name is Wendy Peters-Muschetti. I work at Nourish Colorado. And just a little bit about why my role is connected to a lot of what we'll be talking about today is with my work at Nourish Colorado, and we'll do a little bit more about who we are as an organization as well in a minute. I do get to work very actively in the policy realm at both the state level and the federal level. So I'm always looking for more guidance and connection and strategy around the work that we do in the policy realm with our entire team. So, and I have been involved with this Law and Policy Roadmap, which we will talk about from the very beginning. It's a little bit over a year ago when we started this project. So, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Kiana Mickey. So Kiana, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Wendy. I'm happy to be here. Hello, everybody. Afternoon. My name is Kiana Mickey. I am a food systems and equity consultant. I'm based in Harlem, New York, so I'm on Eastern time, but I'm happy to be here with y'all Mountain Time. And I have done work over the last couple of years in equity, food justice, food systems, grassroots policy and organizing. Have also worked with Wendy from the beginning on building the roadmap. So when the opportunity to come to engage with stakeholders like yourselves, I jumped at the chance and looking forward to participating in the session with you and offering a little bit of some of the insight on how we brought an equity lens and collaboration into the project. Passing the mic back to you.
Thanks, Kiana. So a couple of other people involved that I want to give a shout out to who are, I don't think, are on the call today, but who have been very deeply involved in this process is our legal and analysis team. So the document that we'll be sharing with you all and some background about was not written by me or Kiana. We work with lawyers on this. So just a shout out to Becca Gradone, and Tabor Ward. So Becca was a legal extern that worked with Nourish Colorado for 4 months of full-time work with us to develop this law and policy roadmap that we're going to talk about. Becca is taking very deserved few weeks off. Becca passed the Colorado bar a few weeks ago, is now taking some time off, and Becca will be joining the team at Nourish Colorado as an in-house full-time legal analyst starting September 1st. So we will be able to continue some really deep policy research with her skills. And throughout this process, Becca was advised by a JD, by an actual lawyer named Tabor Ward that we also does a lot of food systems, legal and policy research work. So shout out to the team who did a lot of this work that we're going to be diving into. Also in terms of chat intro, again, if you haven't chatted in to introduce yourself, please do that. A couple of quick housekeeping notes before we move on. We are recording this session. We do want to share this out to people who could not be here today. We never know in terms of people who register. We had close to like 50 registrants, and you always have way less that show up. So we really want to make sure that we can share this with people. I'm also getting some background noise. So if you are not muted, please do mute yourself now. Thank you. Please use the chat feature throughout. We will have some small group breakout sessions during the last half an hour. Until then, please use the chat function for questions. And I'm still getting feedback. And I'm trying to find out who that is. If you are not muted, please mute your computer or your phone, whichever audio you are using. Thank you. We are going to use the full 90 minutes. The last half an hour is going to be a lot more focused on you all and small group discussions. So hopefully you all can stay until 1 o'clock Mountain Time with us. And then just a couple of other housekeeping notes is that, as you can tell, this is simultaneously interpreted English, Spanish. In an ideal situation, we usually like to have slides that have both English and Spanish right next to each other on the same slide. As we get into it, there's some slides that are very content rich and heavy. And as Diego explained as well, there are more words in Spanish. And when we translated some of those slides, they got very, very long, and it was just too much to put on one slide. So it's a little bit wonky, but just a heads up, some of the slides, there'll be a full slide in English and then a full slide in Spanish. And about halfway through, I'm just going to move from the English slide to the Spanish slide, even though I'm still speaking in English and it's being interpreted. So please have patience with us, not the ideal situation, but we're going to work through it that way. And to help you move through this as well, since there is a lot of content on the slides, my colleague, my coworker, Jesse, who's on the line, is going to be chatting two things into the link right now for resources. He will chat in a link to this PowerPoint presentation. So you can, if it's easier, you can just follow along with it yourself. And he will also be chatting in a link to sort of the section of the law and policy roadmap around EBT integration, which is what we're talking about today. So please check the chat for a couple of resources. And so what are we going to be talking about today? Welcome. We will be going to a few group agreements that Kiana is going to lead us through in a bit, because we will be doing some small group breakout work. So we just wanted to sort of set the tone around group agreements. We'll do a little bit about who we are as an organization at Nourish Colorado, if we are new to you. I'll provide a little bit around what is the purpose of this law and policy roadmap. What is that? What is the purpose of it? Kiana will be moving through a variety of slides of how we are attempting to really frame equity and collaboration into and outside of and all around throughout this process. And then I will be doing a deep dive into the specific issue of EBT integration and the legal overview, sort of the legal analysis of this issue. And then the last half an hour, we'll be doing small group discussions. So that is our agenda. And it also is hard for me to chat, to monitor the chat while I'm talking. So feel free to anyone get my attention if you need me. So Kiana, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you. So in order to help us have a robust and intentional discussion together today, we thought that we would share some group agreements. So one is, if folks are familiar with group agreements, if folks aren't, please feel free to add any questions in the chat. I'll be able to answer as we go along. Oftentimes folks use group agreements, or also call them community agreements, and they're really utilized in discussions and meetings like this to just help foster constructive dialogue and find ways to intentionally hold each other accountable for time and what we're sharing. So that includes us as facilitators as well as participants, just to create a space to really share and think through together. So the ones that we had today, I wanted to lift up just a few. These are some tried and trues that I tend to use in sessions like this. Listen actively and share intentionally. One mic, one speaker. So that's really speaking to, since we're here at virtual and Zoom, just making sure if you're not speaking, your mic is off, just to minimize background noise. But and when you are speaking, that we're all being able to listen while folks are speaking. And be present and engaged. I know we're all kind of busy, and we really appreciate you taking time out in a busy day to be here for this conversation. So we're hoping that folks can show up as present, as engaged as they can. Taking space and making space. There's a lot of things we're going to discuss. So we just want to remind folks that if you're somebody who shares often and at length, I know that's somebody like me, I have to remind myself that I'm taking up space and I want to make space. So when to speak up, when to maybe, if I've already shared, maybe make sure other folks in my group are sharing, and use the chat. Maybe if there really is something I want to share with the group, instead of speaking verbally, I can also share it in the chat as well. And vice versa. If you're someone who tends to and sessions like this, it's great to be an active listener. We want that. But if you are someone who maybe doesn't speak often, we want you to feel like this is a zone, not just a safe zone, but a liberated zone. So feel free to take up a little bit more space and share your thoughts, insight, and experience. And then lastly, confidentiality. This can take different interpretations. What I think is important here, or a conversation like this, is taking the lessons and leaving the details, meaning we're going to have a lot of folks coming in with different affiliations, different titles. And what's really important is taking what we're learning, but just being sensitive to how we're attributing information outside of this conversation with names and titles and such, that we want people to feel like they can share and be transparent. And that we're just going to hold certain details here. And then we'll get a little bit more into what that can look like in the breakouts further down. But if there's any agreements that folks would like to add to our group agreements today, please feel free to drop some in the chat. I'll love to amplify that if there are others. But for now, if everyone agrees, we can, just show, thumbs up or a reaction button would be great. Just want to make sure we all feel like we're on the same page. Hearts, also awesome. Thank you, Caitlin. And again, any questions about these agreements, please feel free to share in the chat. And I just wanted to make note, in addition to the agreements, if there are additional comments that are coming up as we're going through, we will have time for questions and reflections in our small group and right after the legal briefing section. But if there are things that you want to drop in the chat, we'll kind of see that as a parking lot or community garden plot. That's what I like to call it. That's for ideas, comments, other points that might come up. Sometimes we think of things in the moment, but we'll get to them later. This is also a great place to hold that as well. So we'll use the chat box for this purpose. I will keep an eye out if there's any questions, but other than that, I will pass the mic back to Wendy.
Thanks, Kiana. All right, so we're going to move back into a little bit more of a background here. So for those of you to whom Nourish Colorado is a new organization, I'm not going to spend much time on this. You can go to nourishcolorado.org. We are a Denver-based but statewide operating nonprofit organization of around 12 people. We have a mission to strengthen connections between farms and communities so that all Coloradans have equitable access to fresh, nutritious foods, and a vision that fresh and local foods enrich the health and vibrancy of all Colorado communities. That could mean a million different things, we understand. Some of you may be familiar with the specifics of our work. We manage statewide programs and initiatives, and we do policy advocacy work at the state and the federal level. You may know us through our work with programs such as Double Up Food Bucks or the WIC Farmers Market Nutrition Program, or through some of our schools and institution focused work, which is led by our chefs, such as LoProCo, the Local Procurement Colorado program. So this slide is very beefy, and I do not want you to worry about reading it or reading through like the details or all the little nitty gritty. It's just really an example to show a little bit about who we are in our theory of change and to understand why like the law and policy roadmap was maybe important to us. So in the far left column, you will see the 4 pillars of our organizational theory of change. And that is to get to that vision I just mentioned, what do we think needs to happen? And that is, we think we need to strengthen nutritious food environments, increase consumer engagement with their food system, channel direct resources, right, to nutritious foods, vibrant farms, and strong communities, and increase the economic power of households to purchase nutritious foods. Again, these could mean many different things, but the quick point I want to make and what we are trying to do in our work at Nourish is to lead practices that move these theories forward, right? And that's what this is just an example grid of. It's just examples of like, what do we do in practice, right? What are some of those programs and initiatives that we do that actually strengthen nutritious food environments, right? But then what we want to continue to focus on is, well, then, okay, then what is the policy change that we're trying to see? What is the policy advocacy we're doing to expand and scale and grow that practice? And then ultimately, what does permanency for that work look like? We always talk about moving from practice through policy to permanency. And the whole point here is that we're really trying to say, we really want to aim for permanency in our work. We don't necessarily want to be running grant-funded programs year after year when this is work that really could be baked into the operations of state or federal government, or could become the norm, right? The way the world just operates for everyone. We want double up food. We want everyone to have incentives, right, to buy more fruits and vegetables and for them to be very accessible. So this is just an example of sort of our approach to our work. And I already failed to move to the next slide in Spanish. Here's the one in Spanish, which is also similarly very dense, just examples of our theory of change. So I'm going to keep on rocking and rolling and dig into the nitty gritty here on the purpose. So what is this law and policy roadmap? For any of you who actually clicked through the link in the invitation to this, you've seen that the law and policy roadmap is like a 130-page document. So the roadmap itself is a really beefy, substantive document that focuses on what we'll share with you in a minute, 7 different legal objectives. But why did we enter into this exercise? One is we wanted to know better how to advance our theory of change. We just threw a lot out. There's lots of things we think need to happen in this world to get to our vision. But where can we actually make that change happen, right? How do we move that forward? We wanted to continue to find ways to identify what are some really nitty-gritty policy questions for us as an organization to work on, like where should we really be looking to make policy change happen? We wanted some actual legal guidance around gaps in current policies. There's oftentimes things we want to do, things we think we should do, things we think would be really cool, but we actually don't fully understand sort of the legal context around those. Like where does a certain rule or regulation or policy, where does it actually sit? Is it a federal government issue? Is it a state government issue? How do we change? Is there even a regulation, or is it just there's silence, and we actually need to create something new? Is there something that needs to be changed? We really wanted some nitty-gritty guidance. We also wanted to identify and elevate key areas of equity throughout this, is that oftentimes, intentionally or unintentionally, in all work, and very particularly in policy work, we often think that we're doing something good and often have not thought through all of the implications of the policy work that we do about who is going to be harmed, who might be benefited, and really can look at all sort of sides of policy action. We did want to, as I mentioned, look at both federal and state. Oftentimes, we're so excited to make some change happen, but it might be like strictly a federal issue and not something that little old nourished Colorado can take on by itself. So we kind of want to know that context. We are also right now in the middle of doing strategic planning as an organization. So it's really good timing that we're getting more direction out of this for our strategic planning. Lastly, we really wanted to provide some interesting direction around issues that we care about, but we also think other partners care about, and that we want to make this analysis available to anyone and everyone who might be doing similar work. And I'm sorry, I failed to, again, skip to this. I'm going to get better at this. So there is a slide on this in Spanish as well. I know I'm moving through this very quickly. So what is in the roadmap? So quickly, there are 7 legal objectives. There's a whole process behind how we got to these that I'm happy to share if anyone is interested later more about. We went through a process internally and with interviewing extensive national partners about where we should be looking, and landed on 7 questions, really, 7 legal objectives that are contained in the roadmap. Today, we'll be focusing on number 1. These are in no priority or importance order, by the way. This is just the order they're put in the roadmap. The first one is implement SNAP EBT integration to increase fruit and vegetable incentive benefits. That's what we'll be talking about today. We also have an area of inquiry in the roadmap around working with local food vendors to increase funding and technical assistance to access modern, affordable technology. So things like accepting SNAP online and free and accessible EBT machines. We have a whole area of inquiry on increasing values-based procurement for the public dollars that are spent on food. We'll have one on integrating food into the school system, which means a lot, but that's really about putting school food on sort of equal playing field with subjects like math. We've explored establishing a Colorado Farmer Equity Office to support underserved producers. There's a legal objective around increasing federal grants to states for nutritious food and fresh produce. And lastly, one on increasing access to and participation in the child and adult care food program, particularly by providers who currently do not participate in that. And I'm going to keep on keeping on. So that's a little bit about, it's a lot, I realize, about what is in the roadmap. And I'm going to pass it back to Kiana to frame up our work around equity and collaboration. Back to you, Kiana.
Sorry, I wanted to make sure I didn't have background noise, but now I need to unmute myself. So, I think what's important to lift up is, we cannot have a discussion about law and policy without certain acknowledgements. So if we're going to talk about equity and collaboration, we also have to talk about coming to identify some hard truths. And some of those are that our food system, our laws, and regulations were really built to profit on exploited and stolen land, the atrocities of the genocide of indigenous peoples and the slavery of Black folks. And so much of our policy and land tenure is rooted in that. So even in our contemporary times, there continues to remain some persistent barriers around changing and implementing equitable food and farm policy. And the things that we want to put into place that will change the course of these divestments, in particular in communities of color and income. So we want to find ways to change our policies to create, to address land tenure and stewardship and support regenerative agriculture practices and, as well as wealth. So in our journey in building the roadmap, we wanted to acknowledge not just these bigger inequities that we're continuing to see, but in the work of Nourish Colorado and building a legal and policy roadmap, how do we hold that while also building and continuing and refining a lens of equity, how to utilize a lens of equity, and how can all of those intersecting pieces inform us on the different ways to not just view current policies and laws that are on the books, but also to think about ways that we can create change, highlight and spotlight opportunities for advocacy, change, and also importantly, collaboration with partners. Because as we know, systemic issues are nothing that we can change as individuals or even by our one institution. We really need to build collective power to do such. So with that, we also want to hold that we do see that policy can be a powerful tool for change, even with all the struggles that we're facing. So while it can be used at times for harm and to perpetrate inequity, it can also be a power that we can take in our own and build towards change. So in this work and in the work with the roadmap, we wanted to try to kind of hold all of these multiple truths, like acknowledging what we're struggling with, but how do we continue to hold ourselves accountable for intentional and unintentional impacts of policy? And I think we can, jump to the next slide. So with utilizing that lens and looking at the legal, and as we've been working on the roadmap, this work has taken on multiple forms that has informed the process from the beginning of doing the research to looking at current practices and policies and programs, and also thinking about impact, identifying additional research, seeing what other maybe states, cities have done that have shifted the needle a little bit. So we wanted to use those things to kind of help determine and hone in on what Nourish Colorado as a policy-oriented organization could feasibly do, holding their current assets, resources, and capacity. So again, there are some things that Nourish Colorado should be the leader on and can be in partnership with, but want to also hold that there's some things that there are other partners that are leading and have more experience with too. So trying to find the balance on where to place ourselves in an organization, but really how to leverage all of that towards change. So what are things that the org should lead? And also, what are ways that we can continue to amplify partners, honor and amplify and innovate in collaboration, and also build transparency in the collaboration that we want to design together on the road ahead with each other. So just wanted to offer that, and we're going to transition into some more of the legal brass tacks of the objective. So I will pass it back to Wendy.
Thank you, Kiana. I'm sorry I misread that. You're frozen, so I couldn't read your body language.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just started looking up and seeing it. I'm sorry about that.
So thank you, Kiana, for that frame. And as Kiana said, now I get the super fun task of diving into the nitty gritty of the legal analysis that, again, was conducted by Becca and Tabor primarily. So I'm really representing their work. And just a few caveats to these slides some of them are pretty dense. And also, just as a reminder, this part that we're sharing here is just the legal analysis, right? Like that's why we have you all here today, is to start the conversation, as Kiana just laid out, about all of the other considerations and perspectives that we need to capture along with this issue. But diving into the issue in front of us today is EBT integration. What the heck does that mean when we say that? So we're shorthanding this issue as EBT integration. And a few key terms, just to make sure we're all on the same page before we dive in. When we mention SNAP, we are referring to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which assists low-income households with purchasing food. When we say SNAP incentives, we mean, in our case here in Colorado, the Double Up Food Bucks program is the example. SNAP incentives are programs that help reduce cost-related barriers to healthy food access and intend to improve diet quality for SNAP participants by giving additional food assistance benefits for purchasing certain foods, often produce, as is the case here in Colorado. And SNAP EBT integration, what does this mean? Potentially, SNAP EBT integration, as we call it, could allow SNAP participants to, in some scenarios that we have been exploring, allow SNAP participants to earn a penny for penny match, although theoretically it could be a different kind of match as well, to earn a penny for penny match incentive directly back onto their EBT card, the electronic benefits transfer card. Did I say that right? The EBT card is literally the card that you would shop with as a SNAP shopper. Putting that incentive directly back on the EBT card when shoppers use SNAP benefits to buy fruits and vegetables from participating SNAP retailers. There are a few different ways that we could explore doing this. This is the way we are exploring it in Colorado. The additional benefits, so that incentive, the extra dollars, would be then placed back on the EBT card as traditional SNAP benefits. So they could be used for any SNAP eligible purpose. That's the way we have been looking at this, is that you earn by buying, say, fruits and vegetables, extra dollars, the amount that you've purchased fruits and vegetables with are put back on your SNAP card. And then those extra benefits you can use anywhere for any SNAP authorized food. So it sounds like someone is unmuted. So if you have a question, please do chat it in, or please do mute yourself. Thank you. I think we're good. So a little bit about this issue, background. We don't love to use the term piloted for things like Double Up Food Bucks, a SNAP incentive program. But when you think about it, SNAP produce incentive programs like Double Up Food Bucks really have truly only been piloted in the United States, in that they are not like a uniform, universally accepted program, right? Universally available program. So incentives are not, again, uniformly available to all SNAP participants everywhere. And currently there are insufficient federal resources to expand the program to really make it a universal nationwide program. So while I think every single state has some form of SNAP incentive, they're still reaching a minority of SNAP shoppers in all of those states. So again, it's still, SNAP incentives are fairly new practice and not fully integrated into the SNAP program. Different states obviously do EBT incentives and EBT integration with different models. We run this different ways than almost every other state in the country, right? So why we're looking into this is that we believe a uniform EBT integration model could advance healthy food incentive programs, increasing sort of efficiency and ease for people who sellers, vendors, retailers, and increasing ease for consumers, which we'll get into a little bit in a minute as well. Just a little bit about us here in Colorado. We do fund our SNAP incentive program, Double Up Food Bucks, primarily through what's called GUSNIP, which is the federal grant that funds SNAP incentive programs. And we do combine that with some philanthropy, private dollars, and some state funds. Of note is that just in the past state legislative session, so the 2022 state legislative session, the state recently approved $1 million for our Colorado Department of Human Services to very high level build sort of the state technology in the Colorado benefit management system to be able to place incentives on EBT cards. So CDHS, our Department of Human Services, now will have $1 million available to them over the next few years to actually just build the technology, the back-end technology, so that this is even technically possible. We can get into a lot more about that, but I just wanted to say that is coming and that is on the horizon. That's just sort of one step in being able to actually move towards EBT integration. So why are we doing this? How could this be impactful? Why do we care about this issue? We have, and learning and talking with many others around the country, have come to believe there are potential benefits of EBT integration. And that is, we believe there could be an increase of redemption rates. So not everyone who earns Double Up Food Bucks, whether right now because you get a Double Up Food Bucks voucher or you're earning it in a different way at a retailer, not everyone who earns that extra incentive spends all of them. In fact, the vast majority, especially at retail level, go unspent or unredeemed. We believe that by allowing SNAP participants to access that incentive dollar, like there's just extra dollars right on their EBT card, and there's extra dollars they can spend anywhere, will increase those redemption rates. How much of those incentives are actually spent on food? We think that this could increase dollars spent on local community-based food, that this model, and I'll get to in a minute, we have an example of how this is working in Massachusetts. This is a model that we could very intentionally start at or only with farmers markets, CSAs, direct market operations, or at least to start by building a system that works well for those partners. And all of our Double Up partner sites right now, whether they're a small store, large store, obviously farmers markets, have a commitment and a requirement to increase sale of local produce anyway. And I'm doing a very poor job of toggling back and forth between English and Spanish slides, and I apologize for that. I'm going to get better. And one more aside on how this could be impactful or why we are thinking this might be interesting to us. Other potential benefits of EBT integration, we believe could be improved evaluation. That this is hypothetical at this point, but by making all of those extra benefits electronic and moving to sort of a single system would give us access to better and more consistent data around how many dollars are being spent, how many incentive dollars are being spent, where, on what foods, in what type of retail settings, and all of that. We also came into this thinking perhaps this is a way to avoid some stigma around this program and using the program, in that right now, however much we think the program is running really well and really smoothly, it does require the use of like paper vouchers, sometimes coupons, in other states, sometimes tokens. So things that really call attention to the shopper. And it's sort of one extra thing you have. It's one extra thing that calls attention to you and your experience that may at times make people a little bit, uncomfortable, maybe some stigma around an extra benefit that they're receiving. Whereas this would just go on their card. Doesn't look any different than just buying something with your credit card or your EBT card. We also, coming to think that perhaps this could support retailers that provide consumer incentives for fresh produce with a more efficient and less burdensome program. And that on the seller side as well, the store side as well, that they do not have to think about like the coupons, the redemption, the vouchers, like where's the benefit going, or how to explain this to consumers. So theory that this is also easier for the actual food vendor as well. And if you see me looking, I have two screens going here, so I don't know why anyone would be watching me, but if you are and I'm looking away, it's because I'm looking at my other screen. So a little bit then about, so that's sort of why we got into this. So a little bit then around the current regulatory environment. Here's where we get into some of the nitty gritty law stuff. So I'm going to take a breath. Everyone take a breath and know that all of the detail, if you want it behind this, is in the very lengthy legal brief on this issue. And you'll see a lot of citations through here. I'm not sharing those, but those citations link to links that are in the notes of this PowerPoint that provide a citation of the very specific like federal law that we are referencing. I didn't call out the names of those laws. I didn't go into like statutes and specific regulations because that's very nitty gritty, but just know that anything that we are citing, we can locate specifically in primarily USDA regulation. So we had asked Becca, the legal intern, to find out, like, dive into this, like, well, we think this sounds like a great idea. Like, can we do it? Can we not do it? Like, where are there barriers or opportunities? So what we looked at is that where are SNAP benefits regulated? So background. So SNAP benefits are regulated by a federal SNAP law titled Issuance and Use of Program Benefits. What we found is that there's nothing in this law that expressly prohibits states from adding funds to individual EBT card accounts or contributing to incentive programs. So there's nothing that says you can't do it. The section of the law requiring EBT ensures state flexibility to design and implement program benefits. So it expressly says that they're intentionally allowing state flexibility in how you design and operate benefits. A USDA regulation on funding SNAP projects governs funding of SNAP pilot and demonstration projects, So again, for programs like Double Up Food Bucks to operate, right? So a special pilot or demonstration program, a special program like Double Up Food Bucks exists in USDA regulation. And again, there's nothing in there that expressly prohibits the use of state funds within those projects. So nothing prohibiting this, step one. So a little bit more on the current regulatory environment is that, and here's where we go really into it, but wanted to share in case anyone really wanted to geek out on this with me, is that our lawyer also looked into a lot of constitutional issues that might prevent barriers for doing things like scaling incentives in this way. And a couple that we were really interested in were the Dormant Commerce Clause and the Equal Protection Clause. What the heck are those? You can Google them if you want, but very high level. Dormant Commerce Clause really focuses, it's an interstate agreement essentially, basically that says, you can't necessarily exclude products from another state. It exists to protect and encourage like interstate sharing and sales and commerce, right? So it's like saying, hey, if you don't have a legal reason to, you can't prefer your own state product over, say, a product from a neighboring state, right? You can't just do that unless there's like a legal reason to. And we wanted to see if that would prohibit, say, scaling of incentives because we might be prioritizing Colorado products for SNAP shoppers, right? The Equal Protection Clause is then related to equal protection of individuals, right? So that's what prohibits stores, for example, in this case, from saying, giving a benefit to a specific population. So we also wanted to make sure like, this is an extra incentive for a specific population, SNAP shoppers. Is there a legal issue there for like, does this prohibit stores from providing that extra to only a certain population? This has come up in cases with things like Double Up Food Bucks, whereas grocery stores are allowed to provide Double Up Food Bucks incentive if they are part of this federal program, the federal grant. So we have found that actually both those constitutional provisions do not expressly, again, prohibit or bar incentives from scaling in this way. We also wanted to look at the preferential treatment waiver requirements. Again, similarly, the preferential treatment waiver is what, say, a grocery store has to ask the USDA and say, hey, I'm basically going to be providing preferential treatment to a SNAP shopper, right? Because if they get this extra incentive. But again, in the 2018 Farm Bill kind of addressed that issue and allowed grocery stores to ask for this waiver to provide extra incentives to SNAP shoppers. all concluding with the good news that state-funded pilot and demonstration project incentive benefits can be directly added to SNAP EBT cards for participating SNAP users through EBT integration. So that was a long way of saying and getting to, there's nothing that says we can't, right? Which is good news. We kind of wanted to anticipate some of these barriers or potential legal challenges early on and in advance before we started to do things like ask the state of Colorado to invest in these programs. So moving on to some potential challenges. Hope you're still with me and breathing. I can't see you. I know this is a lot. But some potential challenges, and this is what in a few minutes here, we're going to start learning more, hearing more from you all about what are some more challenges and opportunities here. Maybe are some retail barriers, right? So to scale in this way, right, and to move towards the EBT integration would require vendors, food vendors, retailers to maybe call out or label or highlight products in a new way as like eligible, right? So fruits and vegetables are what you'd have to spend it on to be able to earn the extra incentive. POS devices, that's a point of sale system. So that's literally the technology you are using to make a sale at your retailer, farmer's market, grocery store, what have you. So that POS, point of sale system, would need to be able to identify what is an eligible product. Staff would need to be trained on it. There's investment of labor and time here. You might have to modify your product database, say in a grocery store, retailer, anywhere, to flag produce, right? You have to change your checkout screen settings, alter subtotals, change your receipts. There's just things that there are many layers here, especially at the retail level, that would need to be changed, less so at the farmer's market. At any level, any food vendor may need to get an updated point of sale system that actually can work with this, with EBT integration. For consumer engagement, and I'm going to move to the next slide, is that obviously some barriers is that we need to ensure that everyone knows what this is and how to use it. If we were to scale in this way, I think there'd have to be a pretty deep campaign engaging SNAP recipients about what this is and how it works, and where you can use it and how you earn it. Obviously, all products need to be really clearly labeled for consumers to understand, like, okay, how do I earn my incentive? That needs to be very obvious and clear, especially if we're offering it at lots of different types of sites. Staff need to be trained to understand the program and then to explain it to shoppers, whether you're in a farmer's market or a grocery store, or what have you. And lastly, like I just said, requires really statewide multilingual outreach and engagement, really deep engagement of all SNAP recipients, to make sure this program is clear and accessible. So a couple things, practices from other states. Very quickly, high level, there's a lot more you can find online about this if you want. And my good friend and colleague Eli is actually on the phone with California right now. So, and if you're lucky enough to be in his small group, you can probably ask him questions about the California pilot. But this has happened elsewhere. So not a whole lot of places. There are a lot of states right now really interested in doing this work, and not a lot have actually really implemented it yet. So Massachusetts is sort of the biggest and best sort of model that we have. The Healthy Incentives Program began operating in 2017. So they have several years under their belts. And how it operates in Massachusetts is that, and this is only at direct farm operations, by the way. So Massachusetts has from the beginning and still operates at like farms, farmers markets, CSAs. It's only direct market operations. But you earn a penny for penny match, right, on their EBT card when someone uses their SNAP card to buy fresh local fruits or vegetables, again, from farmers markets, CSAs, etc. The incentives are capped somewhere between $40 and $80 a month, depending on how big your house is. So like you can't earn, if you use $200 in SNAP benefits on fruits and vegetables, you couldn't earn like $200 more back on your card. It is capped between 40 and 80. But then once you earn those incentives by buying fruits and vegetables, then they're right back on your SNAP card that you can use them anywhere to buy any SNAP eligible anything at any SNAP authorized retailer. And then California has a pilot project, which was, I think, so the state of California passed some legislation to initiate this pilot in 2018, but I believe it is just now getting started. The way this pilot project was set up is that so the state actually is issuing money to support several organizations in the state of California to really pilot this in different ways. And it's a similar proposal there, right? So SNAP participants earn a penny for penny incentives on their EBT card when they buy California grown fresh fruits and vegetables from an authorized retailer. Similarly, it has a cap. $60 a month is all you can earn back on your car. Similarly to Massachusetts, then once that's back on your card, that you can use it at any participating SNAP retailer. There was proposed expansion to bring more dollars from the state in 2022 that did not pass. But Eli, since you are, thank you. Eli is chatting in some additional clarification around the Massachusetts HIP pilot. And Eli, is there anything that you want to add around the California pilot?
That it passed in 2018 with about $9 million, some of that going towards technology funding, and we anticipate a little more than 5 million of that is going to go to SNAP shoppers. So that's how that 9 million breaks down. Yeah, happy to tell more detail later.
Great. Thanks, Eli.
No problem.
So this is all to say other people have been doing this, have been starting to do this, trying to do this, and we're trying to learn from them. So initial recommendations from the legal analysis, right? Again, we're going to hear from all of you in just a few minutes about all the other things we should be considering. But from this legal analysis, some recommendations that emerged were that the federal laws regulating EBT cards should be expressly modified to allow states to load benefits on EBT cards. So this is an example of, as I said, it doesn't prohibit states from doing this, but the federal law could actually say, yes, you can do this, right? And just own it and be clear, right? It'd be a statutory change in federal law that could clarify the vague nature of this law by specifically giving states legal authority to add benefits to EBT cards for incentive programs. Again, it has happened, we can do it, but we can make sure that it's very clear that you can. Alternatively, one other idea is that state dollars or even private dollars for a pilot project to do this could be established to enter into a cooperative agreement with the USDA. And this is something that is a different kind of structure I won't go overly into, but the USDA can enter into a very discrete cooperative agreement with specific states that bring money to pilot this. And there is precedence for doing this. There's one example listed here. There's a certain project that has a cooperative agreement with the USDA to pilot. Could we move to online ordering with WIC benefits as an example? So that is something that's being funded and then studied with the USDA. The USDA could have cooperative agreements with a few states to actually do this in a more sort of focused pilot research lens. So just some opportunities there. And my computer is slowly switching slides. So that we are going to now move into, where am I going? Sorry, everyone, I'm making you sick. There. We are going to move into small group discussions, but before we do that, it's just I know that was a lot. Any questions, clarifications? Also have a chance to do this in small group, but anything off the cuff right now, or inaccuracies that we should address? And you can chat it in or unmute. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you, Kiana and Eli, for adding background around other examples. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, were you unmuting? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just checking to see. I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, great.
Just let me know if I'm missing, and nothing, no questions in the chat so far.
Great.
Great. So we're going to, as everybody understands and is eager to jump into like breakouts. But again, if there are additional questions or clarifying points, always feel free to jump into the chat. And thanks for folks letting us know who's transitioning.
I know. Oh, we're losing some state agency folks.
I know.
our ringers, our state agency folks are leaving, which is great. Hopefully some are still on, but thank you for being here. Yeah, I think we can go ahead and transition then, Kiana.
Great. So as Wendy mentioned, we're going to break into some small group breakouts. I believe we're going to have 2 plus a Spanish language only one if need be. But just a little context for our breakouts. We have time to first break out here around small group reflections. So this is, and then the second one will be to discuss a little bit more about actions and strategies. In between, we'll have a report back. We'll, keep an eye for time, but each breakout will be approximately 10 minutes. So we offer the prompts for each breakout. You're seeing the 4. When we break out into the groups and Jesse takes us away, Wendy and I will be in the breakouts. If there is an additional breakout, Jesse will manage that one, but we'll be taking the reflections with us and just taking some broad notes, and then encourage folks to report back with the full group. So quick note, the breakouts won't be recorded. And we know we may not get to all the prompts, but we just want to make sure folks feel that we're have a good conversation starter. Great. So without further ado, we're going to start getting beamed out into our breakouts, and I'll see folks in mine very soon. Well, we have a few minutes for a full group report back. So if there's 1 or 2 interesting ideas or topics that you want to share across the small groups, this would be a good time to share. And we can just unmic yourself and feel free to talk popcorn style. Or raise your hand. That's also helpful.
I'll go first.
Yes, please, Andrea.
And it's about what we brought up in our little breakout. Well, one of the things I mentioned about that I love the simplifying. To me, it makes it simple for SNAP's recipients to use their EBT card by just integrating it. But I had this concern still, if that comes into where retail stores, such as the large retail store chains, how would that help communities that are heavy SNAP recipients handle the cost that some big chains usually raise because they're in a SNAP heavy SNAP community, so their prices are higher, which I did address this once before, but I'm saying what ideal could we do to kind of, I guess, help with that, offset that? I don't know how to phrase my concern, but it still goes on today. I had a shopper go to the King Supers near me in Edgewater and from Commerce City, and they noticed as high as a $2.50 difference.
Andrew, this is Wendy. I have no way I can solve that issue right now, but I just want to thank you and appreciate. Those are the kind of things I think if we were to move forward this in Colorado, we need to think around program design, right? Who are we going to partner with? Where are we going to start? Who are the vendors, markets we start with first, where we roll this out? So thank you, Andrea.
Thank you. And thank you, Andrea, for sharing. Yes, I think this is good insight to consider. And definitely would be good for conversation in actions and strategies too. Are there other folks before we jump into our second breakout, which is actions and strategies? Okay, so we're gonna I'll keep an eye out on the chat, but we will give Jesse a few more seconds to kind of beam us back. So just real quick, we'll be joining the breakout groups with the same folks we were talking to with a few different prompts. So I'm looking forward to that chat and hearing from other folks when we get back together. We are back. I'm also noticing the time. I think we have just a few minutes left. Laurel, you were mentioning something about talking with grocery stores. I wanted to give you a chance in the report back just to finish what you're saying, but also curious if we can use the next few minutes for anything else that folks want to lift up.
I could just say it in 10 seconds. Just the thought that we would talk with stores who have not offered SNAP benefits about why, so that adding this integration wouldn't make it even harder for a store to adopt SNAP or make it feel even more daunting to them. That whatever we did would make it more possible for SNAP to be integrated into all grocery stores and not less possible.
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Laurel. Awesome. Yeah. Again, we heard some really great insight from a SNAP Double Up Navigator, Andrea. Curious, Andrea, if you want to share, or if there's other folks in the other group that want to share here, what are some things that came up in terms of actions and strategies?
I can add something. Okay. I was listening to Kaylin's group with Eli in the background, and he mentioned that one of the biggest pushbacks California received was the state agencies themselves. So that got me thinking as what are the immediate steps that we need to take to move forward? And I think it should be involving our state agency from the beginning. Like they should be part of these meetings and every meeting after that. So I think we're lucky in Colorado to have them on board and involved. So yeah, just continue to do that. So there is no pushback from them.
That's great. Thank you, Daisy. And thank you, everybody. Thanks for holding on with us with all this info. Thanks for sharing. I hope, you have the links to the deck. We will continue to stay engaged. I'm going to, this is also inspiring me and some of the work we're doing here in the Northeast. So thanks for sharing. I'm going to pass the mic to Wendy to give us next steps and close us out. Thanks again.
Woohoo! And ditto. And thank you, Kiana, for being here. Thanks to all of you for being here. Very quickly, next steps, we will be sharing this recording and any notes back to you all, everyone who registered, anyone else that we think might be interested. We are directly taking this to, we actually have a 3-hour strategic planning meeting this afternoon around our policy strategies. So this is direct information. Also may help inform our Farm Bill platform that is coming. And then other next steps are the next round of, we're doing this again. As you saw, there were 7 legal objectives. So our next one is next week, focusing on and really expanding the child and adult care food program participants, right? Like who is eligible to participate and receive CACFP, which is like the free and reduced lunch program for early care, and what providers can be a part of that. And then moving into September, we'll be talking about values-based procurement for like public dollars, public institutions that buy food, and how we integrate values into that procurement process. And then looking at local food vendors and how we can increase some, maybe modernize some technology for places like farmers markets and CSAs to be able to say accept SNAP online and have free EBT equipment, all the technology that's needed. And then finally in late September, integrating food into the school system, which again is really going to look at how do we kind of make lunch a class is what I keep saying, right? What are all the different ways we can stop school food from being segregated from school financially, labor, wages, time, all of it, and actually make school food like on the same level as math. So those are the upcoming conversations. Please register if you have not. You're willing to geek out with us on all of them. Please, I'm going to chat in my email right now if you don't have it. Anyone is, call me, contact me anytime with other questions, comments, recommendations. But we will continue to be in touch as we move this work forward. Thanks. Thank you all for being here.